Hi, it's Elise here at Bowman Library with a whole new teen book spotlight. So believe it or not, we are on our second to last week of our 2022 summer reading program, Oceans of Possibilities. So make sure you're logging, you're tracking, you're getting all of your tickets entered, all that type of stuff. Because it's the second last week. How crazy is that? But it is a new week, which means we have a whole new theme, whole new badge. And this week we are all about possibilities from the past. We are exploring history nonfiction, some historical fiction, because there are events that have happened in the past, people from the past that we can learn from, we can use today to make a difference in what we know or what we think or what we do. We have an amazing mixture of nonfiction as well as some historical fiction books. So even if you're one of those people, you're like, oh, I'm not really into that, there is actually a little bit something for everyone. So let's take a look at the 6 amazing titles we have today. So our first one is Boots on the Ground. Now this book is about the Vietnam War, and it's not your typical history book. Now what this book does is it brings the war to an extremely personal level and is told in chronological order through points of view, stories, and interviews from 6 US soldiers, a military nurse, and a Vietnamese refugee. Now between all of their accounts, there's over 100 photographs, and there's chapters about individuals who were involved in the war, from 4 US presidents, Martin Luther King Jr., and even Maya Lin, who designed the memorial that's in Washington, D.C. This nonfiction book brings you so much more than just facts about the war. It brings personal details and perspectives that you don't get from your typical history book. Highly recommend this one. No matter what type of reader you are, you will find so much about this, especially with the Vietnam War, which is one that's not talked about nearly as much as it should. This is Boots on the Ground. Sabotage, the mission to destroy Hitler's atomic bomb. True story. Now, during World War II, Norway was hoping to remain neutral, but in April of 1940, the Nazis invade the Norwegian ports, and they intend to capture this city called Vermont, which is this location that produces what's known as heavy water. Heavy water is an essential ingredient, part of the creation of atomic bombs. And that's the reason why Hitler decided to go invade Norway, because he wanted this resource and this location. Now, the Allies find out about the plan that Hitler's going to make an atomic bomb. They decide they need to stop that from happening, because who knows what will happen if Hitler gets his hands on an atomic bomb. So they figure out some ideas how they're going to make this happen, and this is what this book is all about. Now, ultimately what they decide to do is they are going to send these small teams of all these different Allied soldiers and spies into Norway, and they drop them off in different places. They have zero communication with each other, zero contact with the commanders of this idea. They are left on their own. Now these teams move at their own pace, but they're sharing this one common goal. They want to reach the mark, and they want to destroy Hitler's opportunity from getting an atomic bomb. They want to sabotage his plans. Now this is filled with suspense, because if they get caught, they get captured, arrested, they're good as dead. They know that. This book is filled with adventure, there's suspense, there's tension. You will not be able to put this book down, because you will want to know what happens. And the whole time you're going to be reminding yourself, this really happened. This is a true story. This is Sabotage. The Light in Hidden Places. Now, when Stefania was 12 years old, she was living in rural Poland, and all she ever wanted to do was to leave the farm, leave her 8 siblings, and to go to the city. 4 years later, when she's 16, she's done that. She's working in the closest city in Poland, and she's working for a Jewish family that owns a grocery. It is in 1943, though, that everything changes when the Nazis invade their city, and the family Stefania works for, they find themselves being forced to give up everything and move into the ghetto that is being established. Now, Stefania is not forced to move into the ghetto because she is Catholic, leaving her on the outside. But but she knows she needs to help them. If they are going to survive, they are going to need her help. She starts by sneaking in food and supplies through holes in the wall that have been created. And then she soon finds herself hiding Jews that have either escaped the ghetto or they're trying to avoid being sent to the ghetto. She finds herself hiding them in her apartment, all while trying not to draw attention to herself. And she does this, she gets a job working in a factory, she tries to be a good Nazi sympathizer, and then she even starts housing Nazi soldiers in her apartment while she's hiding Jewish individuals there as well. Now this is based on a true story. Stefania was a real person. Her story you can find through the U.S. Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. actually. You will be on pins and needles as you read her story of heroism and bravery, which occurred during World War II. And it's more than you could ever imagine or believe. This is incredibly well researched and written. Sharon Cameron does an amazing job. This is The Light in Hidden Places. Out of the Easy by one of my favorite historical fiction authors, Ruta Sepetys. Now, it's the 1950s in New Orleans, and 17-year-old Josie has not had the easiest life, especially since her mother is a well-known prostitute in a pretty popular brothel. And that's been Josie's entire life. That's all she's really ever known. Now, seeing and experiencing that life, Josie knows that is the last thing that she wants to be around. She doesn't want any part of it. So she lives and works at a bookstore. She has dreams of going to college. And she soon now, as much as she tries to get out of it, she finds herself being sucked back into this world when a high-profile murder is linked back to her mother and her abusive boyfriend. When her mother escapes the city from this mobster who's trying to go after her, Josie gets sucked in because the mobster then comes to her. And Josie is expected to repay her mother's debt. And Josie is faced with some severely limited options on how to get out of this mess and save her own life. This historical fiction is filled with action, there's mystery, there's suspense, there's a pretty awesome friendship. There is a little bit of romance, just a little bit, not a ton though. And there's a character that you can relate to no matter what is going on in your life, what situation you may have been in or be in right now, when you feel like all hope is lost. Incredibly well written, out of the easy. March Book 1. So this nonfiction memoir graphic novel examines and reflects on the late Senator John Lewis's experience growing up in Alabama at the height of segregation to his life-changing meeting that he has with a man named Martin Luther King Jr. And this is part of a trilogy. This is the first book in a trilogy. I will tell you, as you read through this, Martin Luther King Jr. isn't the figure he is today in this book. And it kind of gives you a pretty interesting perspective on that as well. Now, John Lewis becomes a nonviolent protester. He starts leading sit-ins and bringing light to the efforts of everyone being equal. Again, the first of the trilogy, each one goes in chronological order, so you will need to read this one first before you read the other two. This will open your eyes to parts of history that everyone needs to know about, as well as all the men and women who are willing to sacrifice their lives to make equal rights possible. This is March Book 1. And our last one for today is Blackbirds in the Sky. So this is all about the true story of the 1921 Tulsa race riots, which we're at like the 100th year anniversary of this, but it hasn't really been discussed or shared about, especially in history classes in school, like it should be. This needs to be discussed. Now, the author starts with a progression of the events. Before the race riots start, it sets the scene and the stage for how Blacks and African Americans were being treated and how they ended up in this town known as Greenwood, Oklahoma, and they start making this amazing community and life for themselves. And this neighborhood ends up becoming known as Black Wall Street. They're super successful. They're kind of like the exception to everything else that's going on. The author, though, Brandon Colbert, then goes into the events of the race riot. What started it, what happens from there, and it's not just a simple here are the facts of what happened. Mixed in what's going on that she uses primary sources, photographs, there's interviews and oral histories, there's newspaper articles, and you will think you are there as you read through what actually happened. She also examines the immediate aftermath, which includes many deaths, injuries, and arrests, but not to many white participants, as well as the impact it had later in the future, as well as reminding us that this was not a one-time thing. This amazing work is one that is highly encouraged. It will open your eyes. It is heart-wrenching. It is graphic. She doesn't pull any punches, but again, this is an event that needs to be given more time and understanding. Incredibly well-researched, well-written work. Highly, highly, highly recommended. This is Blackbirds in the Sky. So these are just 6 of the books that we have here that are possibilities from the past. Some amazing nonfiction, some amazing historical fiction. So I encourage you to come out, check out one of these, or we do have plenty of others. If there's a specific event, specific person, specific time period, come on out, ask us. We will help you find that perfect book to explore possibilities from the past. I hope you tune back next week when we have our last summer reading theme, which is crazy to think about, but next week is the last one. So I hope you tune back next week, and I hope you have an amazing week.